Hello, this is Paramanandi from the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. We'll be getting started in about 5 minutes, just giving folks a couple more minutes to log on. Hello, welcome to the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program Diversion and Kinship Project Bidders Conference. My name is Paroma Nandi. I'm here with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, along with my colleagues Adiola and Katie. They'll also be presenting shortly and we will jump right in. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. The webinar is being recorded. Folks on the call right now are muted to prevent background noise. We will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, so you can type in questions as they pop up into the box on the dashboard for GoToWebinar. And then if there are questions that come up after today's webinar, you can send them directly to the HSP applications inbox that's also listed on the RFP and application information that's posted on the MOHS website. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adiola. She's going to jump right into information and overview about YHDP.
Hello, everybody. Like Parma said, my name's Adiola, so I'm going to be giving you all the YHDP overview. So the purpose of YHDP is to support communities in the development and implementation of a coordinated community approach to preventing and ending youth homelessness. So YHDP stands for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. In August of 2019, Baltimore City was awarded $3.7 million as part of the Round 3 YHDP community. And then in March of 2020, the Youth Homelessness Action Committee, or our YHAC, and the Youth Action Board, or the YAB, completed the YHDP system modeling and selected 5 projects. So 2 of those projects were rental assistance projects, our rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing. 2 others were for supportive services only, which are our family-based setting project and the Diversion and Kinship project. And then we had a leasing-based housing project, which is our transitional housing. So some key elements of YHDP is our coordinated community plan. So this is a community-wide plan on preventing and ending youth homelessness in Baltimore that includes comprehensive strategies beyond our YHDP grant funding. So it includes key system partner goals, including education, employment, child welfare, justice, and behavioral and physical health. It also incorporates a set of values and principles, including trauma-informed care, positive youth development, family engagement, and youth choice. And our coordinated community plan is published online on the Journey Home website for folks to read through. Another key element of YHDP is our Youth Action Board. So our YAB is a decision-making body that consists of youth and young adults with lived experiences of housing instability and homelessness. So HUD requires the creation of a Youth Action Board. The board must have decision-making ability within the grant's governance, and they approve the plan and the YHDP funded projects. So our YAB has been a part of approving, selecting, and providing feedback for YHDP projects. The projects themselves are funded with federal grant dollars from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. These are one-year grants. They are renewable on an annual basis as part of our larger COC competition. So moving on to YHDP eligibility. So to apply for this project, eligible applicants, you have to be considered a qualified organization, and applicants must meet the following mandatory criteria. So you must be a nonprofit 501c3 tax-exempt organization or another city government agency. You must provide services within Baltimore City. The agency must be registered with an active DUNS number. The agency must submit an active SAM registration with sam.gov. You must commit to operating the program under the Housing First model. Applicants may submit joint applications in response to this RFP. So that would mean that one applicant would be the lead agency recipient and the other as a subrecipient. These joint applications should also submit an MOU reflecting the role of the project partners and specify funding for each organization in the budget section. The applicant must have available agency financial reports or audits for the last 2 years, and they must be in good standing with the state of Maryland. So applications themselves must include the following documents that should be submitted by the deadline to move forward to the review and scoring phase. So you need, of course, one completed application in PDF form with required signatures. It must also include the budget workbook and narrative, the MOHS Fair Housing Policy Statement and Agreements, which should be signed, the MOHS Housing First Policy Agreement, which should be signed, and then a signed conflict of interest questionnaire and limits to primary religious organization documents. So copies of these agreements can be found in the RFP. So next is our threshold criteria. So the following elements are also required. These supporting documents are needed for submission. So you should have your federal tax exempt determination letter. This would apply to nonprofits, articles of incorporation and bylaws, also for nonprofits. Current certificate of good standing from the state of Maryland. This must be within 30 days of the application submission. A current list of your board of directors, also for nonprofits. And then for all applicants, you must include your project organizational chart, 2 years of financial reports or completed audits in accordance with the CFR Part 200, Subpart F, and then match documentation. So we do encourage agencies to apply whether or not they have the full 25% match and demonstrate the extent to which they can provide match. So regarding match requirements, agencies must have at least 25% cash or in-kind match commitment for the amount that they are requesting in funding. So the subrecipient must match all grant funds with no less than 25%, in cash or in-kind contributions from other sources, and this must be in accordance with 24 CRF 578 to Part 73. So all COC program costs and match sources must be in your approved budget. Match does not have to be used on the same budget line item as the grant funding, but it does need to be used on activities for the project that otherwise would be eligible to be funded with COC program funds. A match must be committed prior to the grant agreement, and recipients must document all costs paid with match throughout the period of your YHDP grant. Like we noted earlier, agencies that cannot meet the full 25% match are still encouraged to apply. So MOHS is actively working with philanthropic partners to potentially secure some private funding that could be utilized as match for YHDP projects. So we don't want match to be a hindrance in applying for funding. So what are eligible forms of match? So match can, like we said earlier, be in cash or in kind. So for cash match, a recipient or subrecipient may use funds from any source, including any other federal sources, but excluding Continuum of Care program funds. These funds can be state, local, or private sources. And they must provide the funds, provided funds from the source must not be statutorily prohibited to be used as match. So these funds are used to cover the costs that would be eligible to be paid for with COC program funds. So match can also be in-kind contributions. So these can be services or goods, and they must also be used to cover costs that would be eligible to be paid for with COC program funds. So there's more detail about match in Appendix D in the RFP. So population served under YHDP. So funds under YHDP can serve youth and young adults at risk and at risk of and experiencing homelessness. So youth are minors under the age of 18, and young adults are age 18 to 24 up to the age of 25. So this also includes youth and young adults who are pregnant and or caring for one or more children, including the care of minor siblings. So what does it mean to experience homelessness? So HUD has different categories in their definition of homelessness. Category 1 are folks who are experiencing literal homelessness, which can mean living on the streets and cars in places not meant for human habitation or in shelters. Category 2 are those at imminent risk of homelessness, so they're within 14 days of losing their housing. And then category 4, which are those who are fleeing unsafe situations. This can be any situation that a youth declares unsafe and wants to leave, including abusive, physical, emotional, non-LGBTQ affirming, drug or alcohol situations, or sexual exploitation situations. So target population, special efforts should be made to serve youth and young adults in the following populations: those who are LGBTQ+, unaccompanied minors, pregnant and parenting youth, youth of color, foster-involved youth, justice-involved youth, survivors of trafficking and exploitation, as well as immigrant and undocumented youth. More information about unaccompanied minors. So effective July 1st of 2020, Maryland enacted HB 206, which is unaccompanied minors in need of shelter and supportive services. So this law gives unaccompanied youth at risk of experiencing homelessness the legal capacity to consent to shelter, housing, and supportive services without parental consent. So any public or private non-profit organization that provides shelter or supportive services to minors in need of shelter must register with the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. So DHCD will annually certify that providers meet certain conditions, including running background checks on employees, providing mandatory reporting training for employees, and requiring service providers to develop and implement procedures to screen staff members who work with minors. So I'll now pass it on to Paroma, who will explain more about the Diversion and Kinship Project.
Thanks, Adiola. And so, yeah, I want to go into some of the details that have guided this project. And so YHDP has a list of 10 guiding principles. So there is the USICH Youth Framework that we'll talk about in a minute. The need for projects to respond to the needs of special populations. So Adiola described the efforts that should specifically made for the target populations. There's an effort to increase equity in serving youth populations throughout the city. Some of the models that we're looking for in project proposals will emphasize positive youth development and trauma-informed care principles. Specifically with this project, as it is a diversion and kinship project, the need for family engagement and reunification. And we also talked about, all projects that are that need to go through a threshold review must meet the Housing First standards and practices. So, focus again on immediate access to housing without any preconditions. We're looking for projects that really emphasize youth choice and how youth are a part of the process of, developing the project and providing feedback. Projects should really focus on the individualized and client-driven supports. Additionally, the social and community integration that's so important with rehousing youth and ensuring that they do not return to homelessness. And then also the practice of using coordinated entry, which in Baltimore we call coordinated access. So already here in Baltimore, we've launched a youth case conferencing. So projects any project selected would also participate in that case conferencing to ensure that youth getting connected to this project go through our coordinated access system. So as I mentioned before, the USICH youth framework are 4 core outcomes that we're really looking to evaluate in projects. So stable housing, the need for permanent connections, education and employment focuses, and then the social and emotional well-being. So these, again, 4 outcomes should really be reflected in any project proposal that's submitted, and will be evaluated based on those outcomes as well. So a little bit more about this project. It's very specific in the fact that we're looking for a support services only project that's defined within the COC project types. But even more specifically, we're looking for a diversion and kinship project proposal. The total budget annually is $397,804. Projects would be expected to start October 1st of 2022. So we will talk about the timeline in a second, but that would be an expected annual budget. The project's aim is to connect approximately with 60 youth and young adults through outreach and then coordinated access in order to quickly assess if the participant has the ability to be diverted from the shelter or formal homeless service system. And then the project will also assess the ability to divert and offer short-term flexible financial assistance up to 6 months and support services to keep the youth housed or quickly rehoused. And then the project will also connect youth and young adults to host homes that are established through referrals through the project. And this can include kinship care, where youth and young adults are connected to relatives or close friends, also known as fictive kin. So those are the, the real 3 areas where we're looking for how the project should be designed. Again, the target is 60 youth, connecting them through outreach, and then the coordinated access system, providing that short-term assistance, and then connecting youth where you can to host home situations for that permanent housing placement. So the budgets also should reflect that the flexible financial assistance that's that youth would be eligible for. So the project requirements, I know Adiola spoke a little bit about this, but just to reiterate some of this, you must comply with the program requirements per the Baltimore City COC policies and procedures, which reflect the COC program, HUD COC program interim rule, the YHDP NOFO, and the other HUD approved waivers. So just to dissect that a little bit more, this is a federal grant, so it is governed by, and YHDP is pretty much governed by the COC program interim rules. There are some specifics within YHDP that allow for additional flexibilities. So it is important that you do review those additional resources that we've listed on the RFP to understand those flexibilities. And then if there are, because YHDP is still a demonstration program, there's new information kind of coming out annually about additional flexibility. So any project that is selected would get that technical assistance and support to ensure those flexibilities could be incorporated into their project. You must participate and comply with the Baltimore City's Homeless Management Information System, also known as HMIS. So if you're an agency that currently does not participate in HMIS, you would be required to, if selected, you would participate in the Baltimore City's coordinated access system, including that youth case conferencing that I mentioned before, and then work in collaboration with the COC's Youth Homelessness Action Committee, and then Youth Action Committee, Youth Action Board, and any other committees as needed. So again, because this is a project under the COC umbrella, there's a requirement to have some active participation within the larger COC. And again, some of the decisions surrounding the project or things that would affect the project happen within those committees. And so it's important to be able to participate and be present in that. And then have the project also requires a rapid plan for implementation. So we're hoping that any project that gets selected will have a plan to start enrolling clients within 3 months of the grant agreement. And within the RFP, it does indicate that the project start date would be October 1st of 2022. There, we have a fair amount of time here, but we'd want to see prior to the grant agreement, any project that was selected would have the opportunity to start ramping that project up, so you could start enrolling clients as close as you could to that October 1st start date. And then you would also be required to work with DHCD around any licensing requirements to serve unaccompanied minors, which are individuals under the age of 18. Some additional project requirements. Again, we talked about implementing housing first model that incorporates trauma-informed care and positive youth development. Again, this is really reflected on those 4 outcomes. And we continue to have, there are a number of different YHDP learning collaboratives and community calls. And although, we're well into our demonstration program, there's still opportunities for any new project that gets selected to participate in some of these learning collaboratives as needed. Incorporate youth and young adults with lived experience throughout the project planning and design and implementation. So what that really means is that there is an emphasis to ensure that people with lived experience are part of your project at every stage. And so our current projects have worked really closely with our Youth Action Board. There's a checklist of how you can work with the YAB and at different stages of, again, project planning, design, and implementation. So if selected, you would be provided with that, with those tools and resources on how to connect. But that would be a requirement to ensure that you have that space for additional involvement. You'd also have to adhere to housing first practices, fair housing compliance, and then local hiring for Baltimore City, since this project does exceed that $300,000 grant amount, and then the required insurance coverage. And again, those are detailed again in the RFP, and if there are specific questions about that, you could put that in the chat or send us an email. Just to quickly again go over the housing first agreement, there's an actual form to sign within the RFP guidance. So again, you can't screen out clients for having too little income, having active or a history of substance use, having a criminal record or a history of domestic violence. And you can't terminate clients for either, failure to participate in the support services or make progress, or if there's a loss of income, or if they become a victim of domestic violence. So again, this just needs to be signed and would have to be reflective within your program's policies. We talked a bit about this, and I realized we didn't go into detail about what coordinated access is. So for newer agencies or providers that aren't currently part of our coordinated access system, this is the central and standard system that prioritizes housing and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. It currently is operational for entry into permanent housing programs, so for both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. And then there's housing programs must receive all referrals through coordinated access assessment and referral process. And so again, this project specifically isn't a housing project, but one of the key and essential pieces of it is that it's going to serve as an entry point for youth and young adults to get into the coordinated access system and navigated and referred as needed. So again, part of the goal of the project is to divert folks from the formal homeless service system, but it's also an entry point if individuals can't get diverted, so that there are other options that they could get housed within one of the other YHDP projects or other housing opportunities that are reflected in coordinated access. And then some more details about the homeless management information system. Again, this is a requirement for all funded projects to participate in HMIS. It's our centralized database. It also is where coordinated access is housed. And it's MOHS currently serves as the lead. So it provides the operations and system support in accordance with the federal regulations, and it's also governed by our local COC policies and procedures. MOH also operates a help desk that provides technical assistance and compliance and for data quality. So again, for newer agencies that currently aren't participating in HMIS, that's okay. If you are selected, it's just we want to make sure it's a requirement and that you would get the support from MOHS to comply to those requirements and get the training you needed for staff. And then also for programs that are currently participating, if you have new staff, they would get trained through our through MOHS as well. All right, so I'm gonna pass it over to Katie, and she's gonna talk a little bit about the application instructions.
Next slide. Okay, so for all of the pieces of the the application packet that we've talked about so far, know that you'll need to submit one electronic copy with the application and all supporting documents to hspapplications@baltimorecity.gov. At this time, we cannot accept any paper or fax applications, so please do submit this via email, preferably in one scanned PDF. Note that all project applications need to be received by Monday, February 14th at 4 p.m. Any submissions sent in late, unfortunately, will not be able to be considered. Next slide. Once the applications are in, know that we'll be scoring them, in accordance to the project application sections. So you see we have interest in project understanding, a bit about agency experience and capacity. We'll review the project design, the plan for youth involvement and leadership, and then lastly, alignment with our coordinated community plan and the goals therein, and then the implementation and plan and timeline for the project. So the budget is one of the more important pieces of the application. We'll need you to come up with a proposal that includes all of the estimated cost for the program operating year in accordance with the funding categories that are actually eligible under the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. As part of the narrative, you'll need to explain and justify any costs that you intend to cover with Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grant funding, as well as lay out any other costs that'll be needed to effectively run the project that you'll be supporting through other funding sources, including things like match. So be sure that you have an easily understandable and clear explanation of where costs for the various line items will be allocated to, how it'll be supported, as well as just a clear explanation of the costs themselves, ideally with a monthly breakdown for things like, say, client transportation. Okay. So as we mentioned, the only costs that should be included in the YHDP budget are those that are eligible under the grant regulations. So for supportive services, as this is a shelter diversion project, can include things like case management, childcare, education services, employment assistance and job training for program participants, food, housing search and counseling services, legal services, life skills training, mental health services, outpatient health services, outreach services, substance abuse treatment services, transportation, and lastly, utility deposits. Also eligible under this program are costs for HMIS and participating in that system. That would include the staffing and equipment costs required to keep up with the data entry and case management requirements that are part of HMIS. Lastly, there is admin funding that can be included as part of the budgets. Currently, this is 10% of the total project award. Note that this is split between the subrecipient or applicant and the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. So 5% of that total 10% of the award goes to the subrecipient, and 5% stays with MOHS to support program monitoring and compliance. And again, note that admin shouldn't include any staff that are dedicated directly to project activities. This would include a staff position like a case manager or a peer advocate working directly with clients. That is not admin. Admin is more of your overhead and oversight. Next slide, please. Just a quick review of the timeline, really from RFP to project launch. So as you noted, this opened January 3rd. We're having our conference the 21st, not the 12th. We are hoping to collect any questions as regards to technical assistance for the application by February 9th. And then actual applications are due February 14th to Mayor's office. We are hoping about a 2-week turnaround for the internal review and scoring of applications, with the conditional award letter to be issued to the winning applicant by March 7th. From there, we'll work closely and provide technical assistance to get the project up and running and ready for launch, with the goal of having all of the grant agreement and contracting process in place by September 1st of this year, so that the project can launch operations effective October 1st. Next slide. All right. So we mentioned technical assistance is readily available for any questions related to the process, to YHDP, or to anything related to the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. So we can answer any questions related to the funding regulation, the application requirements, and what compliance would look like for the project that's proposed. The deadline for all of these technical assistance questions, as we mentioned, February 9th. The reason is so that we can answer and publish answers so that everybody is getting access to the same level of technical assistance. So any questions regarding the RFP, the templates, or any of the instructions can be sent directly to HSP applications at baltimorecity.gov. Next slide. So we'll be making this slide deck available for review after we finish today, but note that there are a bunch of additional resources that we have that can help you as you draft your application for this RFP. We have the information available on our website, more information around the journey home, including the coordinated community plan. We have the regulations from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and then some additional guidance on best practices as it relates to this project type. So we're going to take time to collect and answer any questions you may have now. I will put the webinar on mute for about 5 minutes as we collect questions, and we'll answer them for the remainder of our time.
Okay, there's a question here about submitting a joint application and whether project applications included will require all of the listed like requirements, like example, board of directors, financial reports, etc., for both agencies or just for the lead agency. I would say, to be on the safe side, it makes sense to, if you have those documents for both agencies, to include them. Again, a lot of times when we see a joint application, it's because the lead agency is supporting the fiscal piece, and so the secondary agency may not have all the required documentation. So again, if you have it for both organizations, I would provide it, and just clarify what the role for the lead agency and then the sub agency is in your application. If both of you are receiving funding, we'll probably want to see all of those attachments for both organizations, if that makes sense, if you're both receiving a portion of the grant for direct services. Okay, I think that was it. I don't see any more questions coming in. So if we do get more questions, we'll definitely post them to the FAQ on there's a link that's blank right now. But as we do get questions in, we'll post it to the FAQ link on the MOHS website where the RFP application information is posted. And I just wanted to also note on the website, the RFP is listed, and then the application is listed, and then the budget template is listed. Just note that you need all 3 documents, and you'll need to review all 3 of those documents to complete the project. The RFP does have the application on there, so you could use that RFP application, but for ease, we attached a separate application document, so it doesn't have all the guidance to attach, but you can use either. They're the same. Okay, well, again, this is being recorded and should get posted to the website shortly. Thank you for your time, and have a great Friday.